Hi, everyone. This past Sunday, we had some technical issues, and we couldn't quite iron them out in time, and we missed a significant chunk of the message from Sunday morning. And so as I was thinking about how to resolve that and how to be able to get the content back out to all who wanted to listen this week who might have missed it on Sunday morning, I thought, man, there's a bunch of different ways we could do this. And one of them is to have someone else tell the message, to be able to present it in a new way, in a different way than what we have received it on Sunday. So if you're able to physically join us on Sunday, you got the word and the message, the experience that I bring every single week. But if you weren't, maybe you missed part of it and you're like, man, I'd love to be able to catch up on that. And so here's a way to do this. I've got my wife who graciously volunteered to be able to step in and help make this happen. So she is going to read the message that I've written, that I wrote up, and that I'd used on this past Sunday. She's going to reread it in her own words, and you're going to be able to listen to the full thing, no breaks, and hear it from a different perspective if you've heard it before, or hear it for the first time. I'm really excited for you guys to be able to get into this because I'm hoping that you'll be able to hear it differently. Sometimes when someone else gives the same word, sometimes they come out differently and you hear things differently. So I hope that's the case today. So take just a minute, listen in. It's about 10 or 11 minutes long. So just take a few minutes this morning or afternoon or whenever you listen to this. Listen into this, hear it again or for the first time, and enjoy. And we hope to have all the technical issues worked out by next Sunday so we don't have to do this necessarily again. But I appreciate the alternative, and I hope you do too. Enjoy. And we'll see you next time.
Each week, we've been diving into the parables or short stories that Jesus told, discuss them together, and see how it not only shaped the identity of those around Jesus in his day, but shapes us as well. We've talked about dirt, weeds and wheat, mustard seed and leaven, and treasure and pearls, rich fools, and now we have another to discuss. Each week, we're trying our best to put ourselves in the setting and context of Jesus' stories. This week, we're not out by a sea or in a crowded village street, but in a house. We're reclining at a table with a meal spread before us at the house of a Pharisee, a religious leader in the community named Simon. As we're eating and talking, a woman approaches Jesus. With tears on her face and an expensive bottle of ointment in her hands, she kneels down and begins to pour the ointment and her tears over Jesus' feet and wipes the excess up with her disheveled hair. The conversation around the room stops in stunned silence as everyone is captivated and slightly offended by the actions of this woman. Jesus breaks the silence by saying, "Simon, I have something to say to you." And Simon answers, "Say it, teacher." At this response, Jesus tells what one scholar has called one of the most revealing stories of the Christian faith. Jesus said, Luke chapter 7, verses 41 and 42, "A certain moneylender had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now which of them will love him more?" What's the answer to Jesus' question? The one that had the larger debt canceled? Let's dive in and see if we're right. Many of Jesus' parables can be read as standalone stories and still convey the full weight of meaning as Jesus intended, such as the parable of the soils, of mustard seed and leaven. But others are enhanced by examining the context from which they're told, like last week's story of a rich fool. This week's story is great on its own, but doesn't carry nearly as much punch without the context around it. So let's go back to the scene before the story and catch the fuller intent of Jesus' meaning here. In Luke chapter 7, verses 36 through 37, the Bible says, one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him, and he went into the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. And behold, a woman of the city, who was a sinner, when she learned that he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of ointment. Jesus is an amazing teacher, and here again he uses a real-life situation and subtly weaves his story around it. How many debtors were there in Jesus' story? 2. Now, were lots of people around the table that day? When notable people were in town and a host would invite them, it wasn't uncommon for people other than those invited to eat would come and listen to the dinner conversation. So there were lots of people in the room, but Jesus was focused in on 2. His host, Simon the Pharisee, who was known and respected as a good religious man, and this uninvited guest, a woman that everyone in town and at the meal that night knew was a sinner. Now, we don't know the exact sins this woman had committed. It's assumed that she was a prostitute, but whatever it was, the point was she had a reputation and it wasn't good. But Jesus had a reputation too. He was the healer, the miracle worker, the revolutionary teacher who proclaimed that in him the kingdom of heaven had come, and that those who were allowed in were those who had broken hearts, broken spirits, and broken reputations. Blessed are those who mourn, he said. And she took him at his word. She came that night, not expecting grace, mercy, and forgiveness, but knowing that she needed it. She brought with her a soft stone bottle of perfume, one that she had used on herself so many nights before, a tool used to get men to make love to her, and yet this night she poured it all out on Jesus. As she poured out the perfume, her tears flowed with it, large drops that cascaded down and splashed on his feet. A lifetime of grief, sadness, shame, and unreturned love overflowed from her uncontrollably. In this ultimate act of humility and devotion, the mouth that had kissed cheap men now kissed the feet of the King of Heaven. She didn't know how Jesus would respond. Would he welcome her or turn her away? She knew that she would be rejected by men like Simon, and she was right. Upon seeing her, Simon said to himself, Luke 7:39, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who's touching him. She's a sinner. And it's here that Jesus tells his story in verses 41 and 42. A certain moneylender had 2 debtors. One owned 500 denarii and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now which of them will love him more? And just like we did earlier, Simon answers Jesus' question. In verses 43 through 47, Simon answered, the one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt. And he said to him, you have judged rightly. Then turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but from the time I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much, but he who is forgiven little loves little. Jesus asked Simon, do you see this woman? Clearly the man wasn't blind, so of course he saw her, but he didn't see her like Jesus did. Simon saw her bad reputation, her mistakes, her regrettable decisions, but nothing beyond that. Jesus saw her. He didn't know her, but he understood her, saw her need, even though she didn't verbalize it, and saw beyond her brokenness to who God had created her to truly be. He saw a slave that needed, wanted, desired beyond all things to be set free, and he did just that. Remember, Jesus' mission was to proclaim the kingdom of heaven, which consisted of release. Release for us from the prisons we place ourselves in, systems of servitude and cycles of slavery that promise freedom if we work hard enough, but ultimately only put us deeper in debt. He saw her as a debtor in the story with the larger debt that was canceled. So does that mean that Simon, the seemingly good man who did and said the right things, that had a good reputation, was the one with the smaller debt? Jesus knew he thought he was. But the story was a challenge to Simon and to us to reconsider how we see ourselves. For Jesus and his proclamation of the kingdom of heaven, there is no such thing as little forgiveness or big forgiveness. There are those who see their need of it and those that don't. For those who don't see how much they need it, they can never understand the depths of God's grace and won't receive it. How do you see yourself? Are you in need of just a little forgiveness, believing that with some hard work and enough dedication you can work your way out of debt to God? Do you see others as worse off with a greater need for forgiveness than you? Or are you like the woman who had finally come to the end of herself and in a moment of humility and authenticity was willing to give her life away to truly find the mercy, peace, and redemption she so desperately desired? That night, through a woman's humility and a story, Jesus showed what heaven looks like. And that new reality doesn't demand a response, but it sure elicits one. She left the room that night transformed by the unmerited grace of Jesus, made whole and new by his love, and sent out, not turned away, but sent out to live differently and tell her Jesus story to others. Now, we're not sitting around a table breaking bread with Jesus, but he is here with us right now, and he's offering us the same thing he gave her: forgiveness, freedom, and a new life. How will we respond?